I want you to listen very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story. It's a confession. A moment that changed everything in my life. My marriage, my values, my identity. A moment that still lives in my mind, like a shadow that refuses to leave. It started with a silence, not the soft, peaceful kind, but the kind that breathes on your neck, that exposes every secret you've buried deep inside. The kind of silence that makes you realize you're about to cross a line you can't come back from. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't begin with a kiss. It begins with attention, with gentle words, with someone seeing you in ways your partner stopped seeing you a long time ago. That's what happened to me. I didn't plan it. I didn't wake up thinking I would destroy everything I had built. But desire doesn't knock. It just enters, uninvited, and fills the room with heat you pretend you don't feel. And the truth, I didn't resist it. Not really. It happened on a night when the house felt too big, too empty, and I felt too lonely for a woman who was happily married. David was never supposed to become a craving. He was just a friend. A presence, a pair of eyes that noticed the details my husband forgot years ago. My tone, my silence, my mood, my body language. He paid attention. And attention is more dangerous than touch, because touch affects the body but attention affects the heart. That night, I remember the way the moonlight fell through the curtains, painting silver across the floor. I remember the way my breath trembled when I heard his footsteps. I remember telling myself, just breathe. It's nothing. He's just checking in. But the moment I looked at him, I knew it wasn't nothing. He stood there calm, composed, yet burning behind the eyes, and I realized he saw me, really saw me. Saw the woman I used to be, saw the hunger I tried to bury inside marriage, routine and responsibility. He didn't touch me, he didn't need to. His presence alone undressed my soul more than any hands ever could. I tried to walk away, tried to create distance, but guilt can be strong and desire can be stronger. And when he stepped closer, not forcefully, not aggressively, but like he was giving me every chance in the world to stop him, I didn't move, not an inch. That's when everything changed. Because what happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't moral. It wasn't right. But it was real, raw, undeniable. The kind of moment people spend lifetimes fantasizing about, and others spend lifetimes regretting. And here's the truth, no one ever admits out loud. Infidelity doesn't start with physical betrayal. It starts when someone else makes you feel alive again. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. But the cost, the consequences, the things that followed, that's the part no one talks about. That's the part I'm going to reveal now. So stay with me, because what happened next is where the real story begins. If you want, I can also create just enough to let the first bit of light slip through. Daniel's breathing changed before anything else did. Not louder, not faster, just different. Like he'd finally stopped holding it in. His shoulders eased the smallest fraction. And when he looked at me again, the look in his eyes wasn't guarded anymore. It was raw. Unmasked, human. A man who'd spent years convincing himself he didn't deserve to feel anything was suddenly standing here, feeling everything. He swallowed hard, the movement slow, deliberate, like he was choosing his next words with painful care. I don't let people this close, he said. Not anymore. I know, I answered softly, but you just did. His eyes flickered at that surprise, maybe even fear, but he didn't step back. If anything, he leaned closer. Barely, like gravity was doing the work for him now. You shouldn't want this, he said, but there was no strength in the warning anymore. It trembled, cracked at the edges. Maybe I shouldn't, I whispered. But I do. The air curled tight between us, warm and fragile. I could feel the heat radiating off him, steady, restrained, like a fire someone had tried desperately to control for too long. He let out a quiet breath, the kind that sounded like surrender. You don't know what you're getting into, he murmured. Then show me, I said, voice barely above a breath. The words hit him like a shock. His jaw flexed, his hands curled against the edge of the counter, as if stopping himself from reaching for me required actual strength. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. I stepped closer slowly, intentionally closing the last inches between us. I didn't touch him. I didn't have to. The space between our bodies hummed like a live wire. His eyes dropped to my mouth just for a split second. A slip. A betrayal of control. But I saw it, and so did he. That's why you're dangerous, he whispered. You see everything. Maybe I only see what you're finally ready to show. His breath caught barely, but enough. He was done fighting this, done pretending, done hiding. Daniel raised his head, eyes locking onto mine with a look I'd never seen from him before, a look that wasn't about guilt or secrets or the past. It was about now. "What happens if I don't stop?" he asked, voice low, rough, already knowing the answer. I leaned in just enough that my lips hovered inches from his, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath ghosting over them. "Then," I whispered, "we stop pretending there's a line to cross." For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The hum of the refrigerator disappeared, the shadows on the walls stopped moving, the air turned molten, and then something inside him gave in quietly, completely, like the final lock on a long-sealed door clicking open. He exhaled slow and deep, like he'd been holding his breath for years and finally let the air out. "Come here," he murmured, not a command, not a request, something in between, soft, broken, hopeful. I stepped into the space between us, and when I did, Daniel didn't move away this time. He didn't hide, he didn't run, he didn't build walls. He just stood there, letting everything he'd fought to bury rise to the surface. And as his hand lifted hesitant, trembling ever so slightly, I knew this wasn't about desire anymore. It was the moment a man stopped being a storm and became something human again. "Daniel," I whispered. He looked at me like I was the first thing in years he wasn't scared to want. "Don't stop," he said softly. And this time, he wasn't talking about the conversation. Daniel's hand hovered in the air for a moment, suspended between intention and hesitation, like he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't name. When his fingers finally touched my skin, barely, softly, it felt less like a caress and more like a confession, a silent admission that he'd been holding back for far too long. His fingertips brushed along my jaw, slow and uncertain, as though he wasn't sure if he was allowed to touch me, or if he was afraid of what would happen once he started. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time, there was no mask, no armor, nothing hiding the instinct he tried so desperately to fight. "You're not afraid of me," he said quietly, almost like a realization. I shook my head. "No. I'm afraid of losing the moment." Something flickered in his gaze, want, fear, longing tangled together so tightly it was impossible to pull them apart. His thumb traced the curve of my cheek, and I felt his breath warm against my skin. "You don't know what I'm capable of," he murmured. "Then show me," I whispered back. His jaw tensed, like he was fighting every instinct to pull me closer, every memory telling him to run, every fear telling him that letting someone in would destroy him again. But his hand stayed right where it was, steady now, warm and grounding. "You think I'm strong," he said quietly, "but everything I touch, I end up losing." I took his hand gently and lowered it from my face, not to push him away, but to lace my fingers with his. His breath hitched at the contact, a small, barely audible sound, but it told me everything. "I'm not hers," I said softly. "I'm not the past you're still punishing yourself for." His eyes closed for a brief second, like the words hit somewhere deep. When he opened them again, something dark and vulnerable shone through. "I don't know how to want someone without breaking something," he confessed. "Then let's break what needs to be broken," I said, "but not each other." Daniel inhaled slowly, like he was trying to steady himself. His thumb brushed the back of my hand, and I felt him tremble, not visibly, not dramatically, but the kind of tremble that comes from a man who hasn't let himself feel anything real in too long. "I haven't let anyone close in years," he admitted. "I don't even remember how." "Then don't think," I whispered, "just be here, with me." His chest rose and fell, deep and uneven. He looked at me like I was something he'd been denying himself, something he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve, something he feared would ruin him and save him all at once. Slowly, Daniel stepped closer. The space between our bodies thinned until I could feel the warmth of him, the steady heat of someone who'd carried too much pain and too much control for too long. His other hand lifted, hesitating for only a second before settling lightly against my waist, fingers curling just enough to claim without taking. He wasn't pulling me in. He was letting himself lean in, and that was far more dangerous. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, though his voice shook. "Just say the word." "I won't," I breathed. His forehead touched mine, just barely, a gentle press that felt more intimate than any kiss. His breath mingled with mine, warm and unsteady, and in that fragile space, everything he'd been hiding cracked open. "This feels wrong," he whispered. "No," I murmured. "This feels honest." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Instead, his hand slid from my waist to the small of my back, pulling me just a fraction closer, a fraction, but enough to tell me he was done resisting. "You don't know what you're doing to me," he said softly, voice rougher now. "I think I do," I whispered. Daniel's eyes darkened, Not with anger, but with something heavier, deeper, something he'd buried under years of discipline and silence. He leaned in slow, deliberate, like each inch was its own question. His breath brushed my lips. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just that unbearably tender space where wanting becomes impossible to hide. Last chance, he murmured. I breathed him in, steady and certain. I'm not going anywhere. And that was the moment Daniel stopped being a man cornered by his past and became a man willing to step into whatever came next. Daniel didn't move at first. He just stayed there, inches from me, his breath warm on my lips, his hand steady on my back, as if he was anchoring himself to something he didn't quite know how to hold. The tension in him wasn't the kind that came from resisting anymore. It was the kind that came from wanting something he'd spent years telling himself he couldn't have. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You make it too easy to forget everything I said I wouldn't feel again. Then, forget it, I murmured. Just for a moment. His eyes closed like he was trying to memorize the sound of my voice. The way our bodies fit this close, the quiet between us that felt warmer than the room itself. I could feel the shift inside him, not dramatic, not instant, but deep. Like a man, loosening knots he'd kept tied for too long. When he opened his eyes again, something was different. Gone was the guilt. Gone was the hesitation. Gone was the old gravity he wore like iron around his ribs. What looked back at me now was a man on the verge of choosing something he knew would change everything. He slid his hand up from my lower back, fingers brushing the fabric of my shirt, tracing the shape of my spine, like he needed to feel the reality of me beneath his touch. You don't understand, he said softly. I've spent so long holding everything together. If I start wanting, if I start feeling again, I don't think I'll be able to stop. Maybe you're not supposed to stop, I whispered. His jaw tightened this time, not from restraint, but from the weight of desire he could no longer hide. His hand came up to cradle my face, his thumb brushing slow, almost reverent circles along my cheek. The touch wasn't rushed or hungry, it was careful, fragile, like he was touching something he feared would disappear if he pressed too hard. Why you? He murmured, more to himself than to me. Why now? Because you finally let someone see you, I said quietly. A breath escaped him, shaky, uneven. His forehead dropped gently to mine again, and this time he didn't pull back. His voice came out low, rough, and unsteady. You're going to undo me, I exhaled softly. Maybe you need to be undone. He didn't answer, but something in him broke open at those words. Not a violent crack, just a quiet shift, like a lock sliding out of place. I felt his hands settle on my hips, firm but not forceful, grounding me, as if he needed the contact as much as the air in his lungs. He leaned in closer, closer, until his lips brushed the corner of my mouth, so lightly it felt like a ghost of a touch. Not a kiss, not yet. Just the promise of one. A warning. A question. A surrender. I felt his breath tremble against my skin. You don't know what you're inviting, he whispered. Yes, I breathed. I do. His fingers tightened subtly at my hips. Not possessive, not controlling. Just letting go of the last piece of hesitation he'd been holding. You're sure? He asked, voice barely audible, as if he needed to hear it again to believe it. I lifted my chin just slightly, closing the last fraction of space between us. Daniel, I whispered. I've never been more sure of anything. For the first time, a quiet, almost broken sound escaped his throat, half relief, half surrender. Then he finally stopped fighting himself. He tilted his head, slow and deliberate, the heat of his breath spilling across my mouth, and in that suspended second before anything touched, before anything broke open, I felt every wall he'd built crumble around us. When he finally spoke, his voice was no longer a warning. It was a vow. Then come with me, he said, low and certain, because once I start, I don't let go. And this time, neither did I. Daniel didn't pull me into anything reckless or frantic. He didn't crush his mouth to mine or grab me with the kind of hunger that turns moments into mistakes. What he did instead was far more dangerous. He took a slow step back, not away from me, but toward the hallway, and he kept his eyes locked on mine the entire time. It wasn't retreat. It was invitation. A quiet, deliberate way of saying, if you're coming with me, come because you choose this. Not because I pulled you. His hand lifted slightly, palm open, not demanding, not claiming, just waiting. I followed him, not because of impulse, not because of heat, but because the look in his eyes was the clearest truth he'd ever given me. When my fingers slid into his breath hitched, not from desire, but from something far rarer in him. Trust. He closed his hand around mine and exhaled slowly, like that single point of contact meant more than he wanted to admit. The tension in his shoulders softened just a fraction. "This is new for me," he said quietly as we walked, letting someone walk toward me instead of away. "Then don't overthink it," I whispered. "I'm not overthinking," he said, voice low. "I'm afraid of getting it wrong." We reached the end of the hallway, and he stopped. The light from his room cast a soft glow across the floor, and he stood there in the doorway, half in shadow, half in warmth, like a man deciding which part of himself he was ready to be. "You don't owe me perfect," I said softly. "I just want you honest." He swallowed hard, and his thumb brushed over my knuckles, slow, hesitant, almost reverent. "Honest," he repeated. "You want honesty?" "Yes." He stepped slightly closer, close enough that I could feel the quiet strength in the way he breathed, the weight of everything unspoken sitting between us like another person. "Then here it is," he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. They were full, conflicted, raw. "I haven't let someone hold my heart in years, and I'm terrified you'll see how damaged it is." My chest tightened. Not from fear. From understanding. "Daniel," I said gently, lifting my free hand to rest against his chest, not pulling him in, just giving him a place to breathe. "It's not damage. It's history. And I'm not here to break what's left." His eyes softened, not with lust, but with something deeper. Something that looked a lot like surrender. He tilted his forehead toward mine again, resting it there. The smallest touch, intimate in the way honesty always is. "You have no idea how much I want to believe that," he whispered. "Then let me show you," I said. He let out a slow breath, the kind that sounded like a man releasing years of tension. "I don't want a moment," he said. "I don't want something that disappears in the morning. If you step into this with me, it can't be half-hearted. Not for what I feel. Not for what I could feel. I'm not here for half of you," I said. "I'm here for the part you've been hiding." Daniel's eyes closed, like the words hit him somewhere he'd never let anyone reach. When he opened them again, there was no hesitation left. He squeezed my hand gently, not possessive, not urgent, just sure. "Then stay," he murmured. "But not because of my secret. Stay because of me." And when I stepped fully across the threshold of his room, he didn't pull me in, he simply let the door close behind us, slow and quiet, like a man finally ready to stop running from himself.